Hi everyone, welcome to Tea Time with Tasha. I'm Tasha Berner, and I represent Coastal San Diego in the State Assembly. My podcast helps you learn more about what's going on in California and the issues affecting you the most. Today's guest comes from the 21st Assembly District. She was raised in the district she represents. She's an attorney and chair of the Water, Parks, and Wildlife Assembly Committee, which I get to serve on this year. Thank you for joining us, Diane Papan. Woof. Diane
Nice
Papan.
to be with you, Ms. Berner. How's it going?
It's good. Can I pour you some tea?
That would be lovely.
While we spill the tea. So
Spill the tea.
while we get going, you grew up in Daly City and Millbrae. Why do you want to talk a little bit about one memory from your childhood that shaped your passion for public service?
Thank you, by the way.
You're very welcome.
Well, you know, there isn't a particular incident. It was really a way of life.
Oh.
And I think because my dad was in politics, but also because my mom was a very good teacher. And so she always made us very aware of what he was doing. It wasn't like he was going to stop and explain, here's what's going on. But, you know, there were always events to go to. And when I was growing up, my mother wasn't particularly well. And so my dad would always take one of the kids to events with him. So I got to meet people from all walks of life. My mother, her coaching job to us was, just ask people about themselves. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. And I would meet the most fascinating people, and from all walks of life, whether it was, you know, the Mexican church, I met the Prime Minister of France, and everybody in between. So it was really an amazing and very different kind of childhood. But I also saw that you can make a difference, certainly. And my dad was very tenacious about improving the lives of the people in the district. So there were always events to go to and things to observe and ways that I observed him helping people. But my mother was a good translator for that.
Okay.
So it was a good partnership in that regard. But it was definitely a way of life. I mean, you know, the weekends were filled with events. We didn't go on camping trips or anything. That just wasn't our thing. So I think that was probably what may have shaped my passion for public service and it being a way of life for me.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because I think about that because, of course, your dad was an assembly member, and my family wasn't in elected office. But I think about it as what I tell my son. I always tell my son, everybody likes to talk about yourself. If you feel awkward, just ask them questions. And he's like, Mom, that totally works.
Oh, it does.
It totally does. And he's 17 and can talk to anybody now. So
it's a wonderful trait. As a matter of fact, my husband and I will go to events and we'll get back together, you know, in the car. And I find out all these things about people. He goes, how do you do that? I go, here's what I do. At cocktail parties, I always go, so what else should I know? And I don't know why, but people just answer. It's the funniest.
That's a gift when people just tell you stuff.
What else should I know?
I know. Anyway, what else should I know?
I pass that on. It's not copyrighted.
It's
all yours.
Well, it's now everybody's. So there you go. And you're tackling some really big issues. You're tackling climate change, water quality, affordable housing. What are your top issues that you're laser focused on this year in the legislature?
Well, you know, I volunteered to be chair of Water, Parks, and Wildlife.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I
You wanted to talk about bears and dogs?
Oh, well, that was the wildlife part of it.
Coyotes?
Yeah. Well,
Bobcats.
really, I'm more focused on the infrastructure and the infrastructure as it relates to water. You know, it's our most precious commodity. And it is so big to handle that I really wanted to be a part of the committee, and I thought I could make a difference on the committee. Now, because, you know, you were here when there was a budget surplus. I've never had that luxury. So a lot
It was nicer back then, I have to tell you
I'll
that.
bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet. So a lot of what I've been focused on is kind of around the edges. How can we fix things? Because most of water infrastructure is very big dollar items, which is why I let me digress just for a moment. I was very involved in the climate bond, and you know, it was a $10 billion bond. It passed overwhelmingly by the voters.
Yes, it did.
I think it was the bond that actually polled the best.
I think it
outside
did.
of an education bond.
Yeah.
Exactly, because I think the voters of California are very in tune with this precious resource. We have these deluges of lots of water and then no water, and those swings can be quite scary. So that, I think, was a great accomplishment for us. Now the governor is cutting things out of the budget and saying you can go spend on the climate bond, which was supposed to be a supplement to what was in the budget. But nonetheless, I'm grateful that it passed so overwhelmingly, and I think it's definitely going to make a difference. So that was one of the bigger things I already worked on. But this year, I'm looking at how do we make the sustainable groundwater plans a bit more robust and less subject to challenge, so that they can get in place and we can actually start recharging our groundwater basins, as was much intended by the Sustainable Groundwater Act that was enacted 10 years ago.
And I think, for most people, especially like in my district, my coastal district, we think about water, and all people think about is we want clean water. We don't want our rivers and our lagoons and our oceans to be polluted. They think about that. They don't think about recharging groundwater here or there, other parts of the state. So you have to really, really look statewide. And you went from mayor of San Mateo to chair of Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. What's been the biggest surprise in that shift from local to state government?
I don't know if it was a surprise. Well, yeah, it was kind of a surprise. We vote in policy committees, and then you get a chance to vote again as the bill takes up different iterations after it gets out of committee. In local government, you make your vote, that's it, you're done. And it's kind of blood sport to a certain degree because it is so final once you come to a vote. Whereas here, it's like, well, the bill continues to get finessed, and there's such a long way between policy and a bill in the policy committee, and then once it gets some funding along the way. And so it's a long road for a lot of bills. And sometimes they're multi-year projects. So that is very different. And local government is extremely immediate. I mean, you hear about it, as you well know, you served in local government. You hear about it in the market. You hear about it when you're with your kid on the soccer field, whatever it might be. And I love the immediacy of local government. I do. I'm not going to lie.
I miss it. I miss like doing something and within a year, like that crosswalk is in or that stop sign's in, right? Like, or you do this improvement or somebody's like, oh, my kid biked to school safely, right? Like, it's real and immediate. And the things we do up here are really, I just call it longer term.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and in my city, we took on the replacement of a wastewater treatment plant, which was a $1 billion project. But it got me in tune with the infrastructure that can be so challenging as it relates to water. And you're right, it came out of local government, but a lot of the water issues that we deal with are statewide issues because water not only affects suburban water users like our constituents, but it also, and you've got sea level rise, I've got sea level rise issues because we're on the coast. But then it also affects, of course, ag, which is such a big business in California as well. So I love that you're on the committee and you are so engaged with it. And I really appreciate your energy to it because there's a lot of competing interests when it comes to water.
There is. Actually, I thought, it's my 7th year, and I always thought I avoided any of the big water fights in California. This year
Welcome.
Was like, hello!
That's right.
2025.
Welcome to the fold, Berner.
There you go. Halfway through, you're going to take on water. I was like, okay. But you've made it also very easy to learn it. I think you're a great chair, and you sat down, you're like, okay, these are the big fights. These are the type of things. This is how I think about it. I do that with my committee as well.
I know. And your committee is very complex.
Yeah. Well, yours is too. It's just different types of complexities, right? But one of the things we've also talked about many times is how being a mother has shaped us as legislators. Are there any particular policy moments or moments in your career that really where your perspective as a mother really made a meaningful difference in how you vote or how you think about different things?
Well, I carried this bill that dealt with a digital ad tax, which was trying to raise money from companies that sell digital ads and have that money be channeled towards mental health for our youth. Because I really feel like they have been part of a grand experiment to a large degree. I mean, our kids are similar in age. I think maybe now with some of the parameters that have been put on social media use, it's changed a little bit for kids after ours. But I think ours were really at the forefront of this grand experience. And it's been rough. It's been a rough ride. So I carried that bill. We did not make it out of rev and tax, but bills die, authors don't. So I
love that.
See.
I'm
We'll see.
gonna make a poster for your office.
That's
say,
right, bills
die, authors don't.
That's correct. But that was one
Remember
that was really
Diane
led.
Papan.
That's right. Famous last words. I haven't copyrighted that, so go ahead. But that was one where I think I was really driven as a mom.
Yeah.
And I really saw what our daughter went through. And even myself, I think I'm a relatively well-adjusted adult. And you look, you go, oh my gosh, they must have a perfect life. What's happening with my life? It really is. It can play a lot of mind games with you. And for an immature mind, or one that's just sort of coming into its own, it's very difficult. And when you combine COVID on top of it all, it was a rough road. And I'd like to see some of the social media companies really step up to the plate, because I think they've made a lot of money and they can do a lot of good with it.
Yeah.
So I say, welcome to the fold. Let's see what happens.
I remember we had an oversight hearing with privacy and communications and conveyance, arts, entertainment, sports, and tourism. Back then, I also had internet media. So, and Jesse Gabriel, who's now our budget chair, was privacy chair. And we did a joint hearing on social media and youth. And I just told the companies, I was like, you get to do it. This needs to be done. We need to protect children. You either do it your way, or we're going to do it for you.
Right.
These are your choices.
Good words.
And I don't allow my kids on social media. I can't keep them off things like YouTube because they have to use that for school and stuff like that. But I keep them a lot of the platforms because I've seen what it does to shape what they think is normal. And we have the discernment to know that's not normal. That's somebody's curated life. Nobody has a life like that.
That's right. And those algorithms are very powerful.
Yeah,
Don't kid yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there are
So
certain ones I'm not allowed to use anymore for my mental health,
Sure.
Yeah, my chief basically said no.
Cut you off.
Cut me off. She's like, you're not good. Let's not do that. But you've worn a lot of different hats. You're an attorney. You've been a nonprofit leader. You're a mom. How do those different roles shape how you lead and how you advocate for your district?
Well, first of all, I think what they reflect is that I've done some living. And I think that's very important to being a legislator.
Yeah.
And you know this too, because you got to have that 360-degree view. Mm-hmm. And if your life has been just one trajectory, it's very difficult to see what some unintended consequences might be for that single mom who has a kid or two different kids, and they're struggling in a one-bedroom apartment. Yeah. I kind of think we should have some affordable housing that's less based on units and more based on bedrooms. Yeah. Because that's really what families need. Yeah, I agree with that. So those are the kind of things, but I had to do some living to know that. Yeah. That's another, I'm giving you an example of another mom at school. These are people I know. Yeah, me too. And so I kind of feel like as an attorney, I represent a lot of small mom and pop businesses. I know what people go through to make payroll. Yeah. And so the minute you want to think that you're going to, make it more expensive to do business, you got to think about how hard that's going to be for other families.
Yeah. Really, and to implement on that small level.
That's right.
Like on that, okay, they're going to go down and the nuts and bolts end of the month when they're doing payroll. What is this going to mean for their time, for their costs, and all these things?
That's right. Yeah. And coming to the legislature, I found that there are folks that are very, very focused on those that are really, really in need. Yeah. And I didn't find a lot of focus on the middle class, which is my district, and I see those people struggling every day. Yeah. So I kind of felt like maybe I brought a different perspective to it. So each of those roles, I ran a nonprofit, so I was certainly over here in this camp. Yeah. But I feel like each of those roles has allowed me to have a 360-degree view. The other thing that's allowed me to do is really focus on fiscally, how do you get things done? Because I think none of us lacks aspirations for a government that we would like to see. Yeah. I mean, most people are moms, they want to make the world a better place for their kids, to which I say, who doesn't? Yeah. But how are you going to fiscally make that happen? Nothing happens without the God Almighty dollar. Yeah. So how, you and I, we eat, sleep, and breathe how things are going to happen fiscally. Yeah. It's not glamorous, it's not sexy, but it's a big part of the job. And so I've felt like my background has certainly allowed me to be laser focused, not just on aspirations, but fiscally, how are we going to do things done? And
I think that's true. I mean, I've started 2 small businesses, and so when you've had to do that in your life, when I look at this year's budget, or I tell people it's like a 4-year problem. I was like, what we don't cut this year, we're cutting next year. So stop asking me for money.
Yeah, right.
But I tell people it's like a 2-parent working family with 3 kids, and one of the parents just lost their job. Yeah. That's how we're managing the budget. And hopefully next year both parents don't lose their jobs. You know, you have a little savings, you can use that, but you're gonna tighten that belt a little bit.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, and so that's why I tell everybody that comes to my office, nobody should really come into my office asking for money. I'm going to put back up the sign that says "Don't ask for money," otherwise I'm going to yell at you.
Yeah, let's just cut to the chase. Do not ask for money.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly. And you know, one of the things I appreciate about you and coming in and getting to know you is you come in with this lived experience, and I have this lived experience, and it is true. People get here many different ways. Some people are young and they've come up through, they were somebody's district director, you know, or maybe they have a lot of experience, but it's in one sector. But, you know, both you and I have worked in different sectors and different places. And you're part of a growing wave of women shaping the future of California. What's one piece of advice you'd like to give the next generation of young women and girls who dream of making a difference through public service?
Well, I would say, remember, life is not linear.
That is what I tell people.
Do you?
I do.
What I say is, get that dream job, and then it doesn't pan out to what you ever thought you wanted. Quit, or be fired, get fired, hire somebody, fall in love, dump somebody, get dumped, have a mortgage, pay the rent that's too much, and then go to the place you can really afford, whatever it might be. All of those steps along the way make you a whole person. So don't sweat that, you have this pedigree, and then you had to, go into public service and do this, that, and the other thing. All of it builds who you are. So I would say just relax, and your journey will get you ultimately where you want to be.
I wish you were my older sister when I was growing up. That would have been so helpful. I was speaking with a group of young women in San Diego, maybe a month or two back. And I got up there on stage and I had my talking points and everything. And I was like, I was talking and I said, I asked the question, they said, what is the one thing that prepared you for this job today?
Yeah.
And I said, life isn't linear. I did not want to be here today, not on the stage, right? But I never aspired to be in the assembly. It was never my goal. I never wanted to be elected. Didn't see myself in that role. And I did all these different things that ultimately prepared me for this job, which is like the thing I was meant to do in life.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was the thing I was meant to do in life when I was 25 years old,
right,
or when I was 18 years old. So
kept chugging away, and then it led you here.
I created 5-year plans, and they all went awry, and so therefore I should not create any more 5-year plans.
I've never created a 5-year plan.
When I was 38, I stopped doing 5-year plans.
Oh, good.
That's
Smart.
what I did. When
Very
I was 38,
smart.
I finally was like, none of my 5-year plans have worked out, so
Exactly.
I should stop them. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up really going and being prepared for this role was living life. And I think there's lots of ways to public service.
No
right?
question.
There's you can be on staff, you can be on the non-state side, you can be in policies, you can be in academia, you can do all these things. But sometimes life just prepares you for it, right? Mm-hmm. And you have this opportunity, and I remember one of our other colleagues said, luck is just a function of timing and preparation. Mm-hmm. And I often think about that when I think about this job and think I never wanted to be here, but here I am. But I was prepared for it.
Timing is a big part of
right?
it. Yeah.
Those
you got
are
to be at the
things.
right time in your life. I mean, this position came open for me at very much the right time in my life. But all of it, I think, leads you to being empathetic. And I think this job really does demand a lot of empathy, even if you can't solve somebody's problem. You probably found this too, Tasha, especially in your local government days. Listening to people means a lot to them. Even though I may not have all the answers, and I certainly ain't got the money for half of it, but nonetheless, having some empathy and just saying, I get it, and I wish I could do more about it, means a lot. So.
I always say people don't need you to solve their problems. People need you to be heard. They'd like you to solve their problems.
Of course.
They need to be heard. And those are two separate things.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the more people in elected positions hear constituents, the more people will trust government, and I think that's good for democracy and all of us.
Well said.
So on that, Diane, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. You haven't had any of your tea. Do you
I
not
had a
like
ton
the
of my tea.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It's quite nice, I might
It is.
add.
It's lovely.
Play your cards
There's
right,
no-
I might be back sometime.
Oh, look at that. Oh, I have a repeat guest. That's fantastic. You're the first one to volunteer to come back right away.
Anytime. It was a lovely chat. Thank you for your interest.
Yes, of course. And thank you for tuning in, everybody. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, and share with everyone you know. Until next time, stay curious, California.